Another season is upon us. Freshmen arrive wide-eyed with dreams of future glory, while seniors prepare for their last chance at immortality. There are only a handful of these opportunities in a man's life, a handful of chances to distinguish yourself from the rest. It's on these fields where history is made, where legends begin and heroes triumph. Traditions tell the story of what you represent, of those that forge the legacy you uphold. When you come charging out of the tunnel, 100,000 people will be watching your every move. How you respond to that pressure is what defines you. These are the moments that reveal your toughness, your determination, and your pride. The Roughnecks on the Sooner Schooner. Ralphie charging out of the gate. And Chief Osceola planting his spear. The time has come. Your time is now.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm officially back. The skin's a little bit darker, my mood's a little bit lighter, and I was looking out on the ocean water while I was out on my vacation. As the waves came in, it reminded me of this college football season. As the waves drew forever closer, so does our season. Welcome to tonight's show. I am joined by my co-host, Reed Napper, which shout out to you, my man, for holding it down while I was gone, specifically with that Sunbelt show the other day, as well as on my man Colton from O&O Sports. Boys, how are we doing on this beautiful night, man?
Dude, Jake, I'm glad to have you back.
I am also happy to be back and joined to just go talk some ball.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that as well. I'm also just happy to not be cramped in a car for 10 hours. So like my legs are also breathing really good as well. But hey, we got an incredible show here tonight. We got the Pac-12, arguably one of the toughest conferences in the G6 on deck. We also got some independence teams that we're going to show some love to here tonight as well. So record predictions are going to be coming your way. Hopefully, you guys are excited for it. And if you are, make sure you go ahead and do a couple of things. Make sure you hit that like button, as well as hit that subscribe button as well. If you do have to be brand new to the channel, as well as hit that follow button if you're watching on the Twitter platform right now, as we go ahead and give a little bit of an update in terms of what is our conference rankings? What is that looking like holistically here? So we had the Sun Belt show like the other day. We did have an opportunity to do a Mountain West and American Conference show. I put my record predictions out there. If you're watching on YouTube, my record predictions for those conferences are going to be included on the community tab in the future days. But with that being said here, we got to go ahead and jump into listen for the Mountain West and for the American. Before we jump into our fifth ranked conference, which we know is the Pac-12, just a real quick holistic look, like who you guys taking for the Mountain West, like to win that conference, and who you taking to win the American like this fall before we really dive too deep into the Pac-12 this upcoming season?
Well, for the Mountain West, I'm going to have to go with Dan Mullen and the boys, UNLV. I think it's honestly a four-headed monster of a conference. I think UNLV on paper is probably going to be far and away the best team. But you have teams like Hawaii, who should be very good once again. New Mexico, who, burst onto the scene last year, who should be really good once again. And then North Dakota State is kind of a wild card. A lot of people think that they could potentially compete at the top of this conference. I don't quite have them there, but they're definitely a team that is going to be built to succeed pretty instantly in that conference.
Yeah, for me, I slightly am leaning UNLV right now. I'm kind of going back and forth between them and New Mexico. Just solely, I am really high on New Mexico as well this year, so I'm kind of going back and forth. But I give the edge to the Rebels right now with Dan Mullen. I think they slightly have a coaching edge, even though we've talked about on the show before, huge Jason Eck fan. So kind of leaning UNLV as well.
Yeah, and I guess so. Like, we're gonna have the trifecta, so I'm not gonna save the graphic, like, so to speak, when it comes to like our projected Mountain West champion. I did have UNLV, and I think UNLV, I think they have an outside shot as well of representing the G6 in the college football playoff. I think if they want to make the playoff, that Cal game in the middle of the season, I think when they start things up in October, that's going to be a big one. They got to get that Cal win. And I think they got to run the table as well, because I think the Pac-12 is going to be really good across the board. And so if you're going to try to get in like over a Pac-12 team that's maybe like a 10-2 or 11-1, I think running the table is going to really help you out in that regard. So UNLV, have them win the conference, and I'm really curious to see if they're going to be able to beat Cal, and that's going to determine whether how serious they are of a playoff contender they should be considered.
For sure. And like you said, there's a couple big games on their schedule. I have them as my Group of 6 college football playoff representative, but it's more so because I'm not as high on the rest of the Group of 6. I think there's probably going to end up being a team that goes like 11-1, like a James Madison wins their conference, and then they're easily the favorite. I just don't looking through a ton of these teams, looking through a lot of these conferences. I didn't see any team in particular that I was super in love with. So I think by default, I had UNLV as the highest ranked conference champion. So. And then you said the American, right?
Yeah, so then for the the American, I think this is going to be the most chaotic conference like in the country. Like real fast here, I could genuinely make an argument for I think 7 teams like to make a run at the title game and possibly win it. Like in even like a best case scenario. Like ultimately, I did settle in on UTSA, kind of like getting the benefit of maybe working their way to the American Championship game. I think they got a good team. The schedule is favorable. But yeah, I think if I'm going to be like really off on any conference, I think it's going to be the American, because you can make a case for 6 or 7 teams to get to that conference like title at the end of the year.
I see
what you did there. Yeah.
This guy.
In my ranking, I can see probably 8 teams that, if they finished inside the top 2, I wouldn't be surprised. My 8th team is Navy. So that's how deep this conference is, because Navy any given year can win 10 games. So you have teams at the top, like you talked about UTSA. Tulane is going to be a question mark because of the new coach. Army is similar to Navy in that they can compete towards the top of this conference. South Florida, they bring in a new head coach. I know Reed's super high on them. I personally am going with a different team who brought in a new coach, and that is the Memphis Tigers. I think on paper they're probably going to be the best roster in the conference. I really like Charles Huff as a coach, and I like a lot of these coaches. I like non-ball knower here. Geez, who's South Florida's head coach? Reed.
Brian Hartline. Buddy didn't watch the games.
No, yeah. I was not watching the Ohio State offensive performances. No, I was. But I also like teams in Eastern Carolina. I like teams in Temple, to kind of get together. Temple with Keeler, East Carolina with Harrell. I have the title game as Memphis and East Carolina. So I do have UTSA at 3rd, but like you said, this is a deep conference. There's going to be like at least 5 or 6 teams that end up, competing to some high level, whether that be in the title game or in the top 5. Who knows?
Yeah, personally for me, I know you're super low on them, Colton. I have Navy competing at the top of this conference alongside UTSA, same as you, Jake. So I personally give the edge to Navy right now. They've only continued to ascend since
Brian Newberry.
Thank you, Brian Newberry. God, we're struggling on coaches.
There we go.
Ever since Brian Newberry has taken over that program, they've just continued to ascend. I think they take that next step and end up winning the American this year. But I do think UTSA on paper, especially with the amount of returning production that they have, I think they definitely can make a run at it as well this year.
Yeah, and just one last thing before we really dive into the like the Pac-12, like just looking at the American holistically, like I do think that there is genuinely a world as well where you're looking at like you're like 2 weeks left, like in the regular season. You could see 6 teams probably still mathematically alive to make it to the title game. So I think like we're going to be in for like a really chaotic time. Like those Saturday games, like if you're a G6 guy in particular, like that's going to be appointment television, especially when we get into the month of November. Like it's going to be a dogfight, especially when they get into conference play.
For sure. And then there's teams at the bottom of this conference that I'm not like completely sold on. Like North Texas is a team who hires new coach. FAU has some big playmakers. If they can get a couple things, working better than they were last year, they could be there as well. It's just a super deep conference, probably the best conference. I know we don't have it in our consensus ranking, but maybe the deepest conference, maybe not the best, towards the top, but I would argue that they're probably the deepest Group of 6 conference.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so while there wasn't full agreement on the Pac-12 being the like the top conference, but the majority of us did have the Pac-12 ahead of the American. It's going to be fun to watch those two conferences interact, especially as it gets into resume comparison time in terms of who ultimately represents the G6, like in the college football playoff, right? So that's going to be something to really watch out for as the season goes on. But we are in one of my favorite apps, that is the Adobe Photoshop. And now we get into jumping in specifically to everyone's favorite app. Say it with me for the people, that Adobe Photoshop. Got the Pac-12 at like record predictions coming your way here tonight, and also kind of digging into really these two independent teams, because we only have two, Notre Dame and UConn. Oregon State and Washington State, who we're going to talk about later, was technically an independent for the last couple of years. No longer such a thing. So they're going to be ramped in along with the Pac-12 teams here tonight. So with that being said, this is mostly focused on the Pac-12. Let's jump into those independent teams first. And so who wants to jump in terms of how are we feeling about this UConn football team heading into the 2026 campaign?
I'm middle of the road on them. Obviously, the big thing for UConn this year, or this offseason, is that they lose Jim Mora, who, of course, got them to the heights that they saw last year. But they do make a great hire, in my opinion, in Jason Candle, formerly of Toledo. He's had Toledo in a similar spot, towards the top of the MAC every single year when he is the head coach. He makes the jump to UConn. With the amount of turnover, with the, star power that they lose in dude, the names are just not going to be with me today. I'm super tired. It's going to be one of those days. Who's the wide receiver that got drafted this year for UConn? Do you remember?
I do know that like Skylar Bell, I think, got drafted for UConn.
Skylar Bell. What an absolute dog last year. He was amazing. Obviously, they lose a guy like him. They lose a couple other key playmakers. So I don't think they're going to be right where they were last year in the 8-9 win range, but I do have them at 6-6, kind of middle of the road. And with their schedule's not, or super easy either. They do get a few home games against some Power 4 teams, which is interesting, but it's definitely going to be an uphill battle for the Huskies in year one with Jason Candle.
You're not a Jake Merklinger believer?
What about what I just said makes you believe that, Reed? A bowl eligibility in year one with Jason Candle is good. It's good.
Yeah, I agree. I have him right around that. I got him at 5-7 personally. I think some of the tougher games on their schedule, I think they drop. Like there's even games on this schedule that I'm just higher on teams like the G6 teams that they play. Like Air Force, I'm higher on. JMU, I'm higher on. ODU, I'm higher on. So the thing for me is how do they handle kind of those swing games specifically? Like Syracuse, I could see them win. Temple, definitely could see them win. Miami of Ohio is an interesting one for me because we project them to be very high in the MAC. So how does UConn stack up to them? But as we've all pointed out, Jason Candle is a really good head coach, a very underrated head coach holistically. But when you bring in 70 new players and 56 of them are through the portal, I think a lot of that is it's just going to take time for him to build what he wants at UConn. So I think 5-7 personally in year one is a good stepping stone.
Yeah, and I think both those records, as you mentioned, I think are realistic for this UConn team coming into this season. But I'm probably going to find myself lowest on this like UConn football team coming into this season. I have them going 4-8. It's for a couple of separate reasons. You know, we saw arguably the best quarterback and wide receiver duo in the G6 last year now go off to the NFL. And it's not just Skylar Bell. You know, it's Joe Facano, right? Who was quarterbacking this UConn football team. Like, those guys were both dogs, right? Like, not even like for the G6 sense, like just in the national college football sense. Like, those kids were absolutely special for his UConn football team last year. Combined with Jim Mora being a special coach for UConn. And while Jason Candle was good, I don't know if Jason Candle was necessarily on the same level as a Jim Mora last year either. Plus, if you really look at the schedule on the surface, it doesn't look too bad. Like, there's some manageable games in there. But I mean, man, like, they got some tough games that they got to deal with as well. Miami of Ohio is a perfect example of that. We have Miami of Ohio playing in the MAC title game, like in our consensus MAC rankings earlier in the preview season. Temple on the road, KC Keeler. We are some KC Keeler believers as well. They got to go on the road to play those guys as well. Air Force is a dark horse in the Mountain West. James Madison is our favorite to win the Sun Belt. Old Dominion's supposed to be good. And then you end things up with Wyoming on the road, cross-country road trip as well. Like, there's some sneaky tough games here, even though on the surface, it doesn't seem so terribly bad, right? So I think there is a step back. I think UConn gets back to bowl eligibility in 2027, but I don't think this is necessarily the year. I have them going 4-8.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. Depending on how it goes, I'm just high on them overall from a roster standpoint still. Well, I say high, but higher, I guess, than you guys. And the spacing and pacing of the schedule is going to be the biggest thing, like you're talking about, Reed. You know, they start off the year with 2 home games, and then it's to Southern Mississippi and then Miami of Ohio, back home, then to Temple. They get a bye week mixed in there. And then UMass, like you said, Air Force, North Carolina, they're just all over the country. It's definitely going to be a huge test for this team if they can perform consistently when they're having to travel. It seems like every week, you know, they get some good home games like UMass at home. I mean, that's probably going to be a win. North Carolina, James Madison, Old Dominion at home is going to be huge. I feel like that stretch could determine how their season winds up. If they can go 2-3 in those games, they could very well finish with 7 or more wins this year, I think.
Yeah, and that might translate just holistically to your point, Colton. Like, the roster might have potentially taken a slight upgrade from the amount of stuff that they lost, even because 17 of their transfers brought in are from Toledo. So they're following Jason Candle to UConn. So just having that much continuity from a coach to player standpoint could also, you know, benefit them in the long run this season.
Yeah, and a side note as well, I'm excited for that UConn fan base just in terms of the kind of home games that they have as well. I mean, they get to host Maryland. They get to host Syracuse as well, who not only are P4 teams, but those are regional opponents as well for UConn. So I'm very excited for them from that perspective, as well as that North Carolina game that I think could be a fun game. I think could be a competitive game depending on where North Carolina is at this time of the year as well. So, I mean, there's some sneaky fun games here. Just don't think it's going to be necessarily a super successful season, kind of a rebuilding year for Jason Candle in year 1.
And depending who's the head coach in North Carolina by that time.
True.
Jordan.
Let's go ahead and move on here, though, as we have the other independent team that we have on this list, Notre Dame. And I feel a lot more differently about Notre Dame. So this is going to be more of an interesting conversation here, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts just from the Nationals' perspective. I do think that Notre Dame is one of the premier title contenders. If I see Notre Dame winning a national championship at the end of the year, I would not be surprised at all. I think they're in that top tier when it comes to national championship contenders. That being said, even if they do finish undefeated, which I think they can, given how the schedule lines up, I don't think they should be a number 1 seed. That schedule is pretty paper soft, even for me, who's maybe a little bit higher on the strength of schedule aspect of things, and maybe like some other outlets, like Notre Dame isn't even top 50, like in strength of schedule, right? So two things can be true at the same time. I think Notre Dame is one of the best teams in the country, and I think they're going to run the table with this schedule. But also at the same time, there's a little margin of error for Notre Dame. Like, I think if they lose 2 games, they are going to be kind of on the outside looking in like they were last year. So big thing for them. They got to win either the BYU game or the Miami game. Those are my 2 toss-ups that I have. They win either one of those, they're going to be fine. I think they can win both. But if they drop both of those games and maybe don't look that great against SMU either, it's going to be a tough conversation once again. And I don't think that new rule is going to help them either if that comes into play.
Yeah, and something you didn't mention, Jake, is Notre Dame's been a team that's struggled towards the beginning of the season the past couple years. They opened the year not at home against Wisconsin. Now, I don't believe any of us are particularly high on Wisconsin, maybe higher than last year, but Notre Dame's going to be the better team. But we've seen, obviously, 2 years ago, the big loss to Northern Illinois, which nobody saw coming. Who would have thought Northern Illinois beats Notre Dame? Absolute crazy, wild. Last year, they get started a bit slow, and it ends up biting them in the butt towards the end of the year. They end up missing the playoffs. So they play Michigan State at home. They play Purdue and North Carolina on the road. Those 3 I'm not super worried about, but the neutral site game against Wisconsin at Lambeau Field with the Cheeseheads, that one, it has enough weirdness. It has enough, college football vibes, college football strangeness to it, to where I think if Wisconsin did end up, sticking around towards the fourth quarter, we could end up seeing Notre Dame slip once again, in those week 1 games, those early season games, and drop one early to Wisconsin. But I don't particularly foresee that happening. I also have them running the table this year. Am I confident in that happening? Absolutely not. I think there's probably going to be a game that Notre Dame loses on the schedule, if I had to bet, if I had to put money on it. But they're going to be the favorite in every game. Arguably Miami, maybe not. I think they'll be a favorite on the road versus BYU. They'll be a favorite at home versus SMU, and those are their big 3. So to me, it's a no-brainer. This team is built to win a national championship. It's just a matter of seeing it happen and them actually running the table when we say it, almost perennially that they should be able to, and they don't.
Yeah, for me, and fun fact here, so Marcus Freeman has been the head coach at Notre Dame for 4 seasons now. Every season he's had 2 or more losses. And I personally am struggling to see how they get 2 losses on the schedule. There's really only one that's possible, and that's Miami, in my point of view. I do have them going undefeated as well. I also have them being the only undefeated team in the country next year, solely because that schedule is Charmin soft. The only challenge I think they get is Miami. Now, could they potentially slip up at BYU? Yeah, because that's one of the best road environments in the country. I don't really see SMU being competitive, even though SMU is going to be a good team next year. I think a team from Dallas, Texas, having to go up to Northern Indiana in the middle of November, near the end of November, is not going to benefit them well. Namely, I point out Kevin Jennings a few years ago in State College, Pennsylvania, when it was 0 degrees. So yeah, that is not going to play well to SMU's benefit. So I mean, holistically, this is going to be one of the best defenses if not the best defense in the entire country. Just the amount they return, the players they return. A lot of people are putting Leonard Moore, arguably the best, player potentially in college football next season. Some people are saying that. Definitely a first-round draft pick. So holistically, I think this Notre Dame team can run the gauntlet. They definitely make the playoff. A top 4 seed, potentially. I could see them get a top 4 seed just solely because the committee has, shown bias to undefeated teams before, as they rightfully should. But to all of our points on how soft the schedule is, I definitely could see them not getting a top 4 seed. I think I personally have them in the 5 seed. I don't know about you guys in your Colton. I can't remember where you had them, but I personally have them in the 5.
I have them at 1, and it's because I don't have any conference champions other than Texas Tech finishing 12-1, and I don't particularly love Texas Tech's schedule, and they will have a loss. I think as long as there's not like a 12-1 or an undefeated Georgia or Ohio State or Indiana,
Yeah.
I think they'll have that 1 seed locked up. I get it. The schedule sucks, but to me, I just don't see an undefeated Notre Dame being not the number 1 team in the country, unless, like I said, there's those 12-1 or undefeated conference champions in the SEC or the Big Ten.
They have shown as well to drop the conference losers as well, a spot or two. So depending how that goes as well.
Yeah, but I think we have also seen that, like, for conference championship games, like, they aren't going to really punish like the loser of a conference championship game dramatically, unless they are trying to make an adjustment to maybe moving a team that was previously behind them but won their conference championship game upward, right? Like, that's really what we've seen from this committee the last couple of years. Kind of in the middle in between you guys. I don't necessarily have them as a 1 seed personally, because I do think that strength of schedule is going to come into play here when compared to, say, a 12-1 like Big Ten champion, or even if there's a Big 12 champion, say Texas Tech runs the table. Yes, that schedule might be even worse, but that added benefit of a conference championship, I think, is going to benefit them a little bit more as well if Texas Tech does run the table. So I still have them going top 4, but not necessarily number 1. I have them number 3 personally, because again, like, running the table is incredibly hard to do regardless of what the schedule is, even though it's not the best schedule. Sherman's soft, as Reed pointed out perfectly, right? So, definitely a CFP participant. We'll see if that affects them when it gets into CFP time.
Also, I hate that we all have them undefeated for the graphic. That does not go well.
That usually does not bode well. I know that was pointed out like brilliantly in the chat. 12-0 from all 3 of us. I was hoping one of you guys would have said that they were going to drop a game, but we're going to die on the sword together.
Yeah, ironically, a few weeks ago I had them dropping a game, but then I thought about it. I'm like, I don't necessarily trust Miami on the road that late in the year. I don't trust BYU just in general to beat Notre Dame, even though it's at home. There's probably going to be a loss. It's probably going to be like North Carolina on the road or something stupid. That who's going to predict that? But it is what it is.
Yeah, but let's go ahead and move on here now to the Pac-12 portion of this preview, where we give our projections here. So we've seen to have a general agreement here where, like, Boise State's going to be pretty up there. But I know, like, talking holistically, 2 through 8, like, there's no consensus bottom, right? Which I think is what puts the Pac-12 ultimately ahead of the American heading in this year. Like, we know Charlotte, for example, is probably going to be at the bottom of the American. Or we know that a UTEP in the Mountain West, or a ULM of the Sun Belt. Like, we know who the bottom feeders are in some of those other G6 conferences. The Pac-12 is not necessarily kind of that clear. I could see multiple teams finishing last. So I'm curious to hear from you guys, like, who you have ultimately finishing last in the Pac-12 heading into this season.
For me, and this might be a shock to some people, I have Washington State finishing in last. I just don't know about Kirby Moore as a head coach right now. He could very much prove me wrong in year 1, but I don't know if that was the right hire. They only returned 4 starters offensively. Caden Pinnock, I think, could potentially give him a lot of upside at quarterback if he is to be the starter. He has some nice weapons around him. Tony Freeman was nearly 600-yard receiver last year. Kirby Voorhees was nearly 600-yard rusher last year. I think the defense has some question marks, mainly in the secondary. But this Wazoo team, I think, it's going to be tough out of the gate, and mainly because of the coaching staff. I'm not very high on this coaching staff. Even though Trent Bray could potentially be a solid defensive coordinator, I got to see it to believe it first. So Wazoo is last for me.
That's honestly really funny, Reed, because I couldn't disagree more. I mean, I could. That's a lie. I could disagree more, but
I was going to say that's typical for us.
Here's the thing. Mine is going to be whacked out. Like, I'm just going to go ahead and get that out of the way. My list here is a bit obscene. It's a bit absurd. It makes me want to vomit. When you sent the text yesterday, Jake, that we were doing this, I was like, oh no, my list is absolutely garbage. because at at 3, at number 3, I have Washington State. I'm not particularly high on Washington State either. I do like Kirby Moore probably more than Reed. I like Trent Bray at defense coordinator a lot, actually. I thought he did wonderful at Oregon State, and I think he can do wonderful at Washington State. But that with that being said, I have them number 3rd in this conference with a final record of 5-7 and a final conference record of 4-4. At that number 3.
Listen, Reed, or not Reed. Excuse me. I'm starting to get dad brain already, like coming back from his like vacation. But Colin, I look at that number 3 that you have for Washington State, and I gotta tell you, son, I'm right there with you. I'm gonna be standing there on the on the mountaintop with you, like it's you and me versus the rest of the Pac-12. Apparently, I have Washington State going 3rd in this conference. I also have them. So a little bit of a caveat. There is technically 7 conference games, not 8, because that last game is a flex week and it doesn't count as a like a conference game. So we'll get to like editing yours like here in a second. But let me say this about Washington State. They're going to go through a month of crucifixion here in their non-conference schedule, right? At Washington, at Kansas State. They host Arizona as well. Duquesne is a solid FCS program as well. I think there's a real shot Duquesne is going to be in the top 25 to begin the year at the FCS. So all these things into consideration. Washington State is going to come out of this 1-3, right? Like if they beat one of these power conference teams, it would be a surprise to a borderline shocker that they are actually able to pull this off, right? But what I think that's going to help them out with is that they're going to be so well prepared for conference play to come around. And I think that's going to benefit them to a point where I think they are going to exceed expectations for that reason. And so I think Kirby Moore is going to have a successful first season because of that, where not only are they going to finish, 4-3 and finish 3rd in the conference, they're also going to be a bowl eligible team here as well. I got them going 6-6 overall. This is a 4-3 team in conference play. I think they pull an upset off early against Fresno State. I think they do well against Utah State on the road as well, and then finish strong too in conference play, beating Colorado State and Texas State. So that's how they get those 4 wins. So I think it's going to be a solid year, not a liquid or a gas by any means, but a solid year for the Cougars out in Pullman, Washington, getting to that bowl eligibility.
Okay, timeout. I factored in all like the flex game, and I just did it like how they're supposed to do it, which is like seeding, quote unquote. So do you want me to take those out and then redo it? Because all of mine are adjusted already.
Yeah, so I did not account for the like the flex game. That is a non-conference game. At least that was my understanding of it. If you want to keep it in, like I'm cool with that. I know like it's a little wonky.
I also only calculated the 7 games.
I hate you guys.
Not him turning off the camera,
Like, hey, hold on, get yourself back here.
You said up and out, bro.
You said
I forgot to say my record for Washington State. I have 1-6 in conference play, 2-9 before that flex game. So you guys are believers in the 21 portal additions out of Power 4 schools. So I mean, someone has to be. Eighth oldest roster in college football, also, by the way. So you're believing in the portal additions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting there and believing that I think that non-conference slate I think is gonna. They're gonna get them ready to go.
Baptized by fire,
true baptism by fire. And I kind of talked about in the post spring, at least like rankings as well. Like I had them like that's the toughest non-conference strength of schedule in the entire country, like bar none, right? So
yeah, other than like Western Kentucky,
other than I don't know, like Western could, I think it might be even stronger than Western Kentucky's. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, because you have to play 3 Power 4 schools versus 2, I guess. Yeah, I don't know how you did it, but Yeah, I mean, they even to open up conference play, their first game is Fresno State, so they get one of the top dogs right out of the gate. No pun intended.
Yeah, yeah, that's always tough too. Like if you add Western Kentucky as the strongest non-conference strength of schedule, like it's not going to be that huge of a deal for me. But listen, I'm like Colton, I'm gonna let you like come out of your like your shell. Listen, like you and me, very high on Washington State, at least like to the point where we could see them like going to the like the conference like championship game. But you know, who were you not high on? Like who do you got like finishing last year in the Pac-12?
I'm in the middle of adjusting mine. You can change mine since are we doing the flex game? Wait. What am I looking at?
Colton, bro.
I have Washington State before the flex game at 4-7 and 3-4, and I'll get to I'll figure out the order after that.
All right, we'll readjust like yours as necessary. So
yeah.
With that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into my like last place then. Just an absolute chaos conference, just a complete.
Jake, this is your first show back. It would be nothing unexpected, for us to have trouble here.
We'll fire the intern after the show. But anyways, like someone has to finish. Yeah. Someone's it's going to be poor AT. Going to have to finish it in last. I had Colorado State finishing in last. This could go in a bunch of different directions here. I think Colorado State, for them personally, I just don't like how their schedule lines up overall. I think a lot of their winnable games that they would have in conference play, whether it be like playing Texas State or playing a Utah State or even a Washington State, as I mentioned, those games are all on the road. And then you have the likes of like San Diego State coming in, who I think is going to be really good. Boise State coming into town, who I also think is going to be really good as well, like as your primary home games in conference play. I don't think that's going to stack out well for them. Like someone has to be at the bottom. I think they do fine in non-conference play. I think this could be a team that starts the year off 2-0 even. But yeah, there's a lot of change. And I didn't love what I see from this team last year as well. I think it takes a year to ultimately get going. So including the flex game, I have Colorado State going 4-8. So it's not a terrible season by any means, but in conference play, I think they really struggle in conference play. They're a 1-6 like kind of record for me, like in conference play. So Colorado State starts off at the bottom for me.
I also have Colorado State near the bottom, one spot above Washington State. I have them in 7th, also going 1-6 in conference play, 3-8 overall. Wyoming is going to be a tough out of conference game. BYU, I think that's a guaranteed loss. UTSA on the road. We know how UTSA's record at home is going to be historically, so that's also going to be a loss for me out of conference play. Again, this is another team. I think it's going to take some time. I agree with Jim Moore being the new head coach there. Tyson Summers being held on as defensive coordinator, I'm not the highest on that coaching move. And speaking of the defense, a lot of portal additions. The defensive line hasn't graded out well in run defense, so I think they could struggle stopping the run at times this year. Linebackers could be solid. The defensive backs are also littered with portal additions, so defense, I have a lot of questions about. The offense, I think, can be solid at times to be able to put up points. Haven't solidified a true, starter at quarterback unless I have misread something. So, holistically, this Colorado State team, I definitely think is going to be an uphill climb in year one for Jim Morris. So, 3-8 for me, 1-6 in conference play for the Rams.
Yeah, and I can see that like Colton is also like plotting like out there in the corner. Like what you got?
He also leaned in. Dog? He also leaned in.
I have Utah State as my last team in the conference.
Okay.
I also forgot that we're not doing it that way anymore. But it's convenient for me because I have Colorado State at 7. So then we can talk about Utah State. Colorado State I have at 4-7, 3-4 in conference. not super high on them from a roster standpoint. Jim Mora is the biggest, wild card, I think, for this team, just because he's a solid head coach, like we've talked about already. So I could see them, finishing above consensus and above, where we have them, obviously. But there's just not a ton for me to, be excited about from a roster perspective. Like I just said, from a schedule perspective, it's not the worst in the conference, but it's also not great either. I have them in like a 4-way tie for 7th technically, but I believe they're probably going to be towards the bottom of this conference. And now in my new adjusted without the flex game rankings, I have them at 7. at 4 and 7 and 3 and 4.
All right, 4 and 7 and 3 and 4.
So you have a 5-way tie at 3 and 4?
No, okay. Washington State with the new adjustment is now lower.
At what?
At football. What do you mean at what?
What spot?
At 6. I didn't think we were going to get to it now, you jerk.
All right, bozo. All right. Shout out AT, you bozo.
What a bozo! Like what a P4 jabroni that we have as the intern, man. That's crazy. But
AT is definitely getting fired, bro.
Yeah, freaking AT. We love him though, dude. I always love hearing from that dude. But at the very bottom of them, Colton, you definitely talked about Utah State being, I guess, the most cheeks like in this conference going into this year. Having them at 8th, what you not loving about this Utah State team coming into this year?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot not like, Bronco. Yeah. It's just not my night time. I'm just gonna plow through it though. It's okay. Pause. Bronco Mendenhall is a great coach. Okay, guys, let's be professionals here. Reed, let's be professional a little bit, okay? Bronco Mendenhall is a good head coach. I mean, historically, he's been pretty good, but Utah State, it's just hard for me to get up and get excited for Utah State, in all honesty. There's not a ton to work with in terms of, resources, in terms of roster. And I'm not necessarily the lowest on them, obviously, or technically I am, but it's tied. A lot of these teams towards the bottom are going to be kind of in similar ranges, with tiebreakers and whatnot. It is going to be Utah State at my last spot. I have them at 4 and 7 and 2 and 5 in conference.
Yeah, and listen, I'm in a similar boat as you, Colin, because I had him as my my 7th ranked team like coming into this season. First and foremost, not a huge Bronco Mendenhall guy. Just doing my my rankings like coming into like this season, like from a head coaching perspective. I think I had Bronco Mendenhall at the very bottom, or at least in the very bottom, outside of the coaches that are going to be first-time head coaches. Shout out Kirby Moore, as well as Jamarcus Shepard as well over at Oregon State. Like Bronco Mendenhall came in as someone with actual coaching experience, coming in at 6 for me. So not huge on this coaching staff holistically. I do also think they have like McCray, like starting at quarterback. I'm not huge on him. There's just not a ton that I love here. So I actually think from like an overall standpoint, and again, counting the flex game, which by the way, like Utah State, they're got Boise State as a projected flex game, right coming into this season. They have the toughest schedule in the G6, in my opinion, coming into this season as well. It's going to be a tough time. So they may not actually be terrible, but their record's going to look terrible. I have them going 2 and 10, including the like the flex game, with a 1 and 6 conference record. But the only reason I have them above Colorado State is that tiebreaker. I think Utah State does at least beat Colorado State at home, but that's going to be their only conference win. Beyond that, I don't really see any other wins outside of the FCS matchup that they have with Idaho State. So That's what I'm looking at with Colorado's, Utah State. A lot of states in the Pac-12.
Pac State, yeah.
Yeah. Huge on like Pac State, like over here, man. But yeah, 2-10.
Clearly.
They win a conference game, but not a ton to be excited about, to be honest with you.
Don't have a lot of talking points to add. Also not the highest on Brock and Mendenhall. I have the same exact record as Colton, but in 6th place for me. 4-7, 2-5 in conference play. Again, a portal littered team, 17 portal additions from Power 5 schools, which is top 5 in all of the G6. So how does that translate? 8 portals added on the defensive line. They do return 12 starters holistically, but it's a team that went 500 last year. So I think they take a step back holistically, not the highest on this coaching staff, exactly aligned with you guys there. So holistically, I think this Utah State team is going to be near the bottom of this conference, but the bottom of this conference, I think, kind of beats each other up a little bit. So Utah State in 6th for me.
Yeah, and an interesting thing about Utah State as well is that Utah State was one of those teams last year where they essentially beat up on the lower echelon of the old Mountain West last year while getting beat somewhat handily by some of the better teams. They're now in a conference where the lower echelon teams in the Mountain West are no longer there to beef up Utah State, and they got to deal with a lot of the better teams in their conference now, and that even includes Colorado State, who we ultimately have at the bottom. Like they could also lose that Colorado State game, even though I am giving that to them. So like they could be same caliber team or even slightly better than last year, but because of that quirk, that's going to really affect them in terms of how they look from a record perspective.
Yes,
agreed.
Yeah, but I think I'm going to start a fight here at number 6 because
it's Texas State, isn't it?
This team has been getting some hype all over the course of the offseason. They have incredible uniforms. They have absolutely incredible uniforms. But holistically as a team, I'm just not sold on them holistically. Because at number 6, I do have the Texas State Bobcats. Okay? Now, I understand what the counterpoint is going to be from the Texas State conundrum, okay? They're going to point to their quarterback, who I absolutely love, who I think could be leading the NCAA in passing yards. I think he does have that kind of ability. I think they have incredible receivers on the outside, okay? Well, no one's saying that Texas State is going to be boring to watch. No one is saying that. What else does Texas State have? In all honesty, their ground game is going to be predicated on their quarterback because their starting running back got dismissed like in the offseason. Their defense was suspect last year in the Sun Belt West, which has been considered a weaker division in the Sun Belt for quite some time. And by the way, like Texas State had to win 3 games in a row just to be bowl eligible last year. And so the defense was suspect in a lower level of competition. Okay. So now you're going to the Pac-12. And even if you're slightly better, it might not show up statistically. So I'm just worried that passing game is going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. They're going to be fun. They're going to put up a lot of points. But I think they're going to give up a lot of points too. And that's kind of the issue that I have with this Texas State football team this fall. So I think they have an incredibly high ceiling. I think this is the first team that I'm really looking at as, hey, this team could play for a Pac-12 title. I think that ceiling is there for Texas State. But as a baseline, I have so many concerns for them that I don't have them playing in a bowl game. This is a 4-8 team for me. I do think that they win a couple of games in conference play. I think this is a 2-5 team in conference play. I know I'm going to start some fights. I understand what I'm doing, but that's just where I'm coming from with Texas State as of now.
Reed, how much do you disagree here?
I personally have Texas State going 3-4 in conference, 5-6 overall. I have them in 4th place. To Jake's point, offense is going to be electric. I mean, if you have not watched Texas State offense, that's mainly the only reason you should turn on the game is because they're going to be able to put up tons of points. if their defense can at least have a pulse, I think they have a chance at a higher ceiling. But I got to see it to believe it. New defensive coordinator Will Wyndham comes in. To Jake's point, their starting running back got arrested, so he's no longer on the team. So questions at running back for me. Offensive line, they're plugging and playing. 2 starters returned from last season. So I will say this team definitely has a higher ceiling to what I'm projecting them at. Like there's a realm, the possibility they win 9 games next season. It's holistically on that defense, because offense, proven commodity, is just, can the defense have anything of a pulse to be able to compete? So I have them in 4th personally, 5 and 6, 3 and 4 in conference play.
So that means I am going to be the biggest outlier here. I have them 3rd. I have them at 7 and 4, 4 and 3 in conference. And where I do agree, like generally with what you guys are talking about, like defensively, what are we doing? TJ Kinney, he's had plenty of time. We should start kind of seeing results on that side of the ball. I think offensively, like you guys have already said, they're going to be electric. They're going to have the best quarterback wide receiver trio in maybe in football, probably in the group of 6 easily, but maybe overall in football. And you could have said that last year. 2,000-yard wide receivers and an absolute dog in Brad Jackson at quarterback. The biggest difference for me, I think, is probably going to be the non-con. The 2, obviously, they open the year at Texas. I pretty safe to say that's going to be a loss. Okay, they get 3 home games after that against UTSA, North Texas, and Incarnate Word. Now, with that said, those aren't the worst home games for those teams, or worst road games for those teams, because in state, Jake's going to be higher on UTSA. I think that's a winnable game. With the caliber of offense Texas State's going to have, and North Texas is a team that's rebuilding as well now with Neil Brown. After that, I think once you get into conference play, they're going to be able to kind of coast. I don't think they're going to necessarily blow teams out, but I think they're going to be meaningfully better than a Colorado State, who they play at home, Utah State, who they play at home, Fresno State and Washington State, who they play at home. I think those could be toss-ups. I would definitely say Fresno State's going to be the better team, and I think we'd all agree. But I don't think there's a ton of teams in this conference that are just far and away better. Defensively, probably. I definitely think there's 2 teams definitely that are better all around, but just with how borderline elite overall this offense should be this year, we talked about the running game, but I think besides that, they're going to be a great offense. They're going to be able to, at least be able to compete handily versus, the bottom half of this conference. So I do have them closer to the top here at 7 and 4 in conference, or 7 and 4 overall, 4 and 3 in conference. Sorry.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you, Cole. And I think like a lot of those games that they do have on their schedule is winnable. Like I have them with a kind of like a 9-win ceiling. And that's even like not even if we didn't count the flex game. I think a 9-win ceiling, I think, is very manageable for this Texas State football team. Like they could be special. They just need elements outside of that passing game to really step up and be competent. You don't need to be good. You don't need to be like elite by any means. Just as Reed mentioned, have a pulse. Make sure that Brad Jackson doesn't have to do everything in the running game. Make sure that the defense can get maybe not even consistent stops, but timely stops, right? If you can get those things and be even a below average defense, Texas State is very dangerous. And I could see them even playing in a title game potentially, even though I do have them at 6. It's just from a baseline perspective, they got to show me that they can do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair.
But as we get ready to close out the bottom half of the Pac-12, I am curious though, Colin, you love this Texas State football team, but we haven't closed out this bottom half of the Pac-12 yet. So who closed out that bottom half for you as you're looking at your 5th best team in the Pac-12 heading into this season?
This is where I'm going to have Oregon State. I'm not sure exactly where I fall on consensus with Oregon State. I have them kind of in the middle of the road. Last year, obviously, they were pretty terrible. I don't know if you guys watched any of those games, but they sucked, really bad. I think Jamarcus Shepard, while he doesn't have, relevant head coaching experience, has, borderline okay coordinator and analyst and, assistant experience, but this is his first big shot. And I think he's getting like a blank slate almost. They bring in some cool pieces, but I think they're going to be able to experiment. We've already heard him in interviews talking about there's going to be turmoil. I think if you're an Oregon State fan, you need to kind of expect that at this point, because Oregon State isn't the Oregon State of maybe even 3 or 4 years ago. They took a steep nosedive last season. So it's definitely a rebuild. It's definitely, a readjust. And I think this is a good hire, on paper, even though he doesn't, like I said, have any relevant coaching experience. They bring in some cool pieces throughout the portal, mainly Braden Atkinson from Mercer, who was an absolute animal at the FCS level last year. But overall, I don't think they turn it around in 1 year. I have them at the middle of the conference. Could they be better? Could they be worse? Absolutely. It's just, to me, this isn't a team that stands out specifically in one regard, and it's a team that I think has enough upside to where I feel comfortable keeping them towards the middle.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Reed.
No, go ahead. You're the host.
All right. Well, so I'm right there, with you, on Oregon State here personally, Colton. And I think what people need to realize was that not only were they bad, they were historically awful on special teams. And Oregon State fans would be the first people to tell you that they were absolutely terrible on special teams last year, to the point where it costed them multiple games, right? Especially that Sam Houston game, which they definitely should have won, because Sam Houston was nothing special by any means of the imagination there either. They lost multiple games because of that. Now, if they're even showing a post of like a singular post, oh my goodness, it's that vacation brain, I'm telling you. Singular pulse on special teams. Like, they could be a bad special teams unit, but if they're not historically awful, if nothing else changes from Oregon State, they're going to be a better football team heading into this season, to the point where, I could see them at least flirting with some kind of a bowl eligibility at the end of the year. So I'm right there with you. They're going to be fine. It's going to take a couple years to really get themselves to the point where they're competing in the Pac-12 once again, which honestly, with who they are, they should be doing that holistically. But they're not going to be terrible this year. I think there is improvement. I have them flirting with bowl eligibility with a 5-7 overall record, including that flex game. I think they go 3-4 in conference play as well. They're going to be okay. Nothing special here. I think special teams improves. That really drives that improvement for the Beavers in this fall.
So we are all aligned on them record-wise. I have Oregon State in fourth, tied on conference record at 5-6, 3-4 in conference play. Again, not much to add here. I kind of like the addition of Mike McIntyre. Has a ton of experience between college football and the NFL at defensive coordinator. So has been a defensive coordinator at multiple stops, defensive assistant at multiple stops. So I like that addition on paper, at least. 9 starters are projected to be from the portal. So if they can all pan out, I think the ceiling for this team could be a little higher. And again, I like Braden Atkinson more at quarterback than Malik Murphy. I know we've talked about that before when we did our Pac-12 quarterback rankings, but I think Braden Atkinson solely elevates the level of this team if he is to be the starting quarterback, just solely because of what he did last year at Mercer. So running back, I have some questions. Defense is littered with portal additions as well. So if basically everything pans out, I think they have a higher ceiling of 7-8 wins, but I think they're good for middle of the pack here in fourth, 3-4 in conference play.
Yeah, and I'll say this I will say this as well about Braden Atkinson. That dude is a straight winner. Coming out of Mercer, like you mentioned, that is a very strong FCS program, formerly coached by Mike Jacobs, who is a dog in his own right as well. So if he does win the starting job at any point over Malik Murphy, I think that does elevate the ceiling of this Oregon State football team. Now, whether Jamarcus Shepard actually pulls the trigger and makes that switch or not, that's to be determined, because I don't know what he's going to be like as a head coach when it comes to game days on Saturday. But, that is something to definitely watch out for if you're an Oregon State guy in particular.
He was the quarterback. I know he came from Alabama, but he was the quarterback coach, right?
I believe he was some kind of offensive coach. I don't remember exactly what position he was.
Google.
Yeah, I knew he was from Bama. I couldn't remember.
Offensive coordinator, wide receiver, assistant coach.
Wide receivers. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, shoot, I would trust him somewhat to make the right decision at quarterback, just based on having experience at Bama. Yeah.
And, that's kind of not really, but kind of similar role to what Kurt Cignetti did at Alabama. Also, shout out defensive end Takari Hickle. He has good name. He has a good name. Did he make all name team? No, but I didn't even see him, so might have to revise that. Takari Hickle.
We are now familiar with his game now, and I'm also going to be familiar with this number 4 team that I do have on this list. And I think this is the first team that I think does have a realistic shot of making it to the Pac-12 title game this year. For me, it's the Fresno State Bulldogs. This Fresno State Bulldogs football team, first and foremost, I think they have an incredible coach. Matt Enselek is now out there at Fresno State. He's entering year number 2 and had them in the mix to make the Mountain West title game last year. This was a 9-4 football team. They return multiple all-conference players on the defensive side of the ball. They added Dylan Hampton out of Sacramento State, who had some really good moments for them, like on the Hornets, 8 sacks last year. So I think this defense is going to be a really nasty defense for Fresno State this upcoming season. Thing for them, though, is kind of the opposite issue that I have with Texas State, but it's not as bad. What's that offensive consistency going to be like? If they have good offensive consistency throughout the course of the year, like this Fresno State team can definitely play for a conference championship. And I think what it's going to really barrel down to is that San Diego State game that they have on the road. I think that decides who possibly goes to the Pac-12 title game at the end of the year. I think that's the one that's kind of circled as the most important game. They also have Boise State at home as well right before that. So those 2 games I think are going to be really pivotal for Fresno State. Defense is going to be good. Do they have enough offensively to make it kind of like that last leap that they need to make before making it to the actual title game? They were close last year. We'll see if they can get there this year, but I think they're going to be a good squad. I have them going 8-4 with the flex game being accounted for, and they go 4-3 in conference play.
I'm going to be higher on Fresno State. Give me 1 second. I can get you the number. 7-4 and 5-2 in conference, and second in the conference. Now, that is due to that I'm just lower on probably most of these teams than you guys are. But really the only question mark, in my opinion, about this team is Christian Martin or whoever ends up shaking out at quarterback. I think it's projected to be Martin, but, it's not. I don't believe they've announced a starter yet. I think, they'll be able to make it work with him. I don't really have many concerns, but obviously that is the biggest question mark with him. First-year starter, transfer quarterback. The running game should be okay once again. The defense, like you said, Jake, should be the focal point of this team. I think it'll be strong again. I'm not super worried about them. I think they're probably the strongest team overall. Obviously, with the quarterback being your biggest question mark on the team, it's going to give you a lot of variable. To me, I don't foresee Christian Martin being so bad that they end up not appearing in this title game. There's going to be a couple teams that you guys are higher on that I am lower on, and I'll get into the reasons when we talk about those teams. But to me, other than the obvious, who will all have it number 1, this is probably the strongest team all around in this conference.
Ditto to that. Ditto. I definitely think Fresno State is easily, probably roster-wise, the second best team in this conference. I have them going in 3rd personally. I have them 5-2 in conference play, 8-3 overall. I mean, literally, I had the same point of view as Colton. Quarterback with Christian Martin is probably the biggest variable on this team, the biggest question mark I have, just solely because he is going to be a first-year starter transferring from Maryland all the way across the country. But to that point, they've continuity at both coordinator positions. They return holistically 16 starters, 9 of them defensively, 3 of them on the offensive line. Running back is going to be good with Rayshon Luke back, Josiah Freeman back at number 1 receiver. So holistically, I think this team is going to be really competitive in this conference. I think that they just drop a couple of spots throughout the season. Like their schedule is loaded with road games. USC, San Jose State, Washington State, San Diego State, Utah State, Texas State, all on the road. So I think out of conference games will be fine. Sac State at San Jose State and Rice. USC is a guaranteed loss, but how they compete in those road games and conference play is going to be the deciding factor for Fresno State this season, in my opinion. So I have them going in 3rd place.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could see like Fresno State being one of those teams that not only makes it to the Pac-12 title game, but possibly be in a mix for a CFP spot as well. Because I have a ceiling of a 10-win football team. I think that this Fresno team could be absolutely special this upcoming season if Christian Martin lives up to expectations as someone that has all the physical tools to be really special, but doesn't really have much experience yet. So, like, in that ends, like, he's has to win. I mean, we've seen this happen at his time in North Dakota State, and we've seen that first year as well. So that ceiling absolutely does exist as well. Like for the Fresno State guys.
Yeah, I also have a 10-win ceiling for this football team next year.
But Colton, I know that you mentioned like specifically that there is a team out there that Reed and I love, but maybe you like them, but you don't love them. You don't want to marry them yet. Like who happens to be that team for you?
I don't like them, and I don't want to marry them, and I, for some reason, am the only person who feels that way. It's the San Diego State Aztecs. Okay, I'm not afraid to admit it. Part of me while I blow my nose.
Damn, blowing his nose right in front of his date's face. Jeez, he really doesn't like this date.
Yeah, I mean, he really wants to fumble this one on purpose. Probably talking
seriously.
to the side piece.
Yeah, what did Sean Lewis do to you?
I don't dislike Sean Lewis. I think they could be good from an offensive standpoint. But the best part about this team was what? The defense. Okay? And what made them so great defensively last year? Everything that they lost. They lose their defensive coordinator, Rob Ark, to Nebraska. They lose their top safeties. They lose Trey White, the premier elite edge rusher. They lost everything defensively. If you look, it's a skeleton roster. There's nothing in particular. I don't think they will, fall off and be 2-10. But the defense was unequivocally the best part about this team, and they will, without a shadow of a doubt, get substantially worse without Rob Orich and without those elite playmakers who now are all at Power 4 programs. Okay, I like Lucky Sutton. Jaden Denigal, put it in the hype tape. I don't care. The Lucky Sutton is the best part about this team. I don't foresee them being as good as they were defensively. If they end up being top 50 at both offense and defense, they could, end up competing towards the top of the conference again. But to me, they were pretty good last year, and it was mostly because of the defense. The offense, it was mid-70s in efficiency. Okay, so I'm not super high on them. If they regress to, mid-70s on both sides, they're going to be exactly where I have them. And where I have them is 6-5 and 3-4 in conference. Perhaps even worse, but I'm being nice.
Perhaps even worse. Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Listen,
Wow.
I like some spice to it. I definitely love some spice to it. Now, Reed, you know how I feel. I feel like we're gonna have him in the exact same spot. But Reed, you know how I feel about him. I have San Diego State playing in the Pac-12 title game. I have them as a 9-3 football team, like heading into this year, and then. Let me just double check what I have for the conference record. I do have them going 6-1. I think that they only dropped one game in conference play. I don't think that the drawbacks on defense is going to be as bad than is going to be anticipated, because I do like their portal pickups, especially in the secondary. They got an all-max safety in Jalen Thompson from the portal. They also grabbed Jason Oliver, who had multiple interceptions last year at Sacramento State. And then Portland State was absolutely terrible, but their secondary was not the reason for that. They got multiple guys from that secondary that were ball hawks from there as well. So it's a rebuilt secondary, and none of them are going to be as good as Chris Johnson, who was in my opinion, a top 50 NFL prospect last year. Definitely considered him as a potential first round type of guy. None of them are as good as him, but I don't think that there's going to be that much of a drawback. I think Sean Lewis, who has success at winning at Kent State at all places, right? Like, you know how hard it is to win at Kent State? It's incredibly hard. And he was responsible for the most successful season that Kent State had in the 2020s. They had a really good season last year as well. Lucky Sutton is there to kind of play this complementary football where you're going to play solid defense. You're going to have a good running game. So I don't think San Diego State is really going to go anywhere. This is, in my opinion, a 9-win football team. Counting the flex weekend, they're playing for that Pac-12 title at 6-1. I think this is a team that could potentially be special yet again out in San Diego.
Colton.
Shut up, bro.
Same exact record, Jake. 9-3. Well, I guess 9-2 because you get it. 6-1 in conference play. So San Diego State, man, they return a top 5 running back in G6. Offensive line is going to be great, even though 6 of them are portal additions. 5 of them have starting experience. The secondary, to your point, is going to be great for new defensive coordinator Demetrius Sumner, who was elevated from within and has been at San Diego State for 10 years. So I expect somewhat of a continuous turnover on the defensive side of the ball, even though he's a first-time play caller. But the secondary is going to be good. Yeah, all right, well, bro. Jaden Denegal, wow, he isn't the flashiest quarterback in this conference. I've said it before. I think he just has to be a game manager. He's not, as long as he cannot turn over the ball a ton, get the ball to Lucky Sutton. I think he's a capable quarterback. Now, he did throw 8 interceptions last year.
9 total turnovers, 59% passing, 1,800 yards.
Yeah, I'm looking at the same exact stat line. You want to keep talking for me, or can I finish?
Oh, you said 8 interceptions. There's a
8 interceptions. 8 interceptions, 9 total turnovers.
And a fumble.
Okay. Exactly to my point. If you can clean up the turnovers and be a game manager, this is going to be a solid football team when you have a 1,300-yard running back in the backfield with a very good offensive line in front of him. That's my point. So,
from an efficiency standpoint on offense last year,
I don't have it off the top of my head.
Mid 70s.
Okay.
They were an okay offense last year. They were carried by Lucky Sutton. Like I said, the best part about this team.
Yeah, because they weren't highly efficient throwing the ball.
Defensively, secondary was great for them last year, but they had absolute game records at the edge rushers. Those guys are gone. Their coach is gone. What made them great as edge rushers are gone, and the guy who consistently makes defenses better. And every single stop he's been in, Rob Orich.
All right. You know what, Jake? For the first time on our predictions, I'm proposing a wager. The line is set at 6.5. Colton has the under. I have the over. You also have the over if you want to get in on this. We will settle a amount off camera, but I am calling a wager right here between you and I, sir.
Okay.
All right. We will come to a consensus amount offline. And might even announce that if you want to. I don't know.
Yeah, we might have to announce it for the next show that we're going to do Friday night, which is going to be the first Power 4 preview. So I'm sure that's going to have absolutely zero controversy whatsoever when that time comes.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But we're going to see about that. I could see us having a couple fights when the ACC or whoever is our 4th ranked conference comes around. But one thing that we're all in agreement with, though, is who we have winning the Pac-12. Now, we're not going to save the graphic here. Boise State, I think we all agree, is our number 1 team heading into this season. I think really the big question for us holistically is, what do we see this Boise State team doing, in terms of, do they make the college football playoff? What do they do in non-conference play as well? Because not only do they have that Oregon game, Western Michigan and Memphis are also including in there as well, which are 2 teams that I do have in my top 25 that I put on Twitter for the G6 top 25. So I'm curious to hear what you guys feel about this Boise State team, not just from a conference perspective, but do you see this team possibly playing in the college football playoff at the end of the year too?
They're going to be the favorite. They're going to be probably the most well-rounded team in the group of 6 and the most proven team in the group of 6. But in my opinion, Maddox Madsen just has to be better. Like, you saw him have a great season with Ashton Jainty. Dylan Riley comes in, and Sire Gaines last year, they picked up right where Jainty left off. Combined, they didn't have the season Jainty did, but they were 2 solid running backs, and he just took a step back. I think that's really what held this team back from getting back to where they were the season prior. I don't think it should necessarily take an Ashton Jainty level season for them to be there. Maddox Madsen just kind of, the stat line isn't bad. Under 60% completion percentage is never fun, but 18 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, 3 fumbles, 4 touchdowns on the ground, 2,300 yards. It's just not going to cut it. You need to get closer at least to that 65% completion percentage, 3,000 yards and 25 touchdowns. And you're probably the best team in the group of 6 by a mile. I don't know what exactly happened. Like I said, Ashton Jainty left, but he had a ton of weapons at his disposal and it just fell flat. So to me, that's just the biggest thing. Defensively, they're going to be solid, very, very solid once again this year. Maddox Madsen, you just got to step up, my friend.
Yeah, just have to step up for sure, man. So it really barrels down to and especially what they do in non-conference play too, in terms of what they do. But yeah, definitely the type of team that I think could definitely make a run at the CFP. Just curious with what you're seeing from them from a rec prediction, just to make sure I'm not doing you dirty when I put this on Twitter graphic up the next morning.
I have them at 8-3, 6-1 in conference.
All right, what about you, Reed? How you feeling about this Boise State team?
Yeah, I have 9-2 overall, 6-1 in conference play. Boise State, I mean, again, to Colton's point, they're going to be the clear favorite to be the G6 representative in the playoff. As of right now, I have them in that spot. So if you want to add the asterisk to represent that. So they're going to be my G6 representative as of right now, but I could easily flip that in a week's time. So I'm kind of debating between 3 or 4 teams. Anyway, the biggest thing for me is Madsen has to be better. They're going to have the best running back duo in the entire G6 with Sire Gaines and Dylan Riley. Jaden Virgin Morgan was an all-conference, all-American level edge player. He's back on the defensive side. So the offensive line is going to be solid. They returned 3 starters. So it's going to be a solid group. But what are the weapons for Maddox Madsen to be able to throw the ball to? Darren Morris is a transfer receiver coming in. Cam Bates, Ben Ford return. So I kind of have some questions at the receiver group, but Rayshawn Jones is a freshman wide receiver, made some publicity in spring ball. So if he can pan out to be a big time playmaker early on in his career at Boise State, I definitely think the ceiling for this team is definitely a college football playoff spot once again. And that's where I project them at this current moment.
Yeah, and not just him, but Terrius Favors as well was also a 4-star recruit, according to 247 Sports. So there's a couple of blue chip players on this roster as well. They have good returning production on top of that with a experienced starting quarterback. Really love the staff. I think personally, Spencer Danielson, I think he is the best coach in the G6 right now with what he's done at Boise State. And you could say that Boise State is an easy place to win at. I completely understand that. But Andy Avalos, who I believe was the last guy, he found out a way to lose. He was basically the Will Hall of the Northwest, right? And so they had to fire him mid-season. And so what does Spencer Danielson do since then? He's entering his 3rd year, but ironically enough, he has 3 Mountain West titles to his name, right? So really the thing for them is, how do they avoid complacency? Because I think outside of that Oregon game, they're going to be heavily favored. And so they're going to have really high expectations. I have them going as an 11-1 football team, including the flex week. I think they go undefeated in conference play. And to be honest with you, I also saw the betting line for the Oregon and Boise State game. I think that's the game that they lose, but I think Boise State is disrespected there. I think Boise State actually gives Oregon a little bit of a run for their money. Maybe not. It's not going to be like a 1-score game, when it's all said and done, but I think it's going to be a one-score game into the second half. I think Boise State does give them a good fight against the Oregon Ducks. But yeah, it comes down to Maddox has to be better, as Colton pointed out. Because if Maddox is kind of the 2024 version of himself that made it to the college football playoff, they get there. I think he does. He steps up to the plate as a third-year starter. And frankly, they end up losing 3+ games, even if they do end up winning the Pac-12 at the end of the year. I think that's considered a failure. So high expectations, but I think Spencer Danielson answers the call. I think they are going to be my representative for the college football playoff on behalf of the G6.
There you go. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that for me. It's a popular pick, but it's popular for a reason. Like I said, defensively they're going to be strong. They're going to have the running game. It's just Maddox Madsen.
Yeah, that's really what it barrels down to. But as we go ahead and wrap things up here, looking at this holistically, we also took a look at the independent teams. Was there anything on this list you really feel like, hey, if there's a team that you feel like you're going to be really wrong on, for the Pac-12, who you think that team is going to be, or even if it's one of the independent teams, because we did talk about them as well tonight too.
I think Notre Dame loses a game. I'm not going to predict it. It could be Miami, it could be North Carolina, it could be, I don't know, Northern Illinois again. I know they don't play them, but the ghost of Christmas past will haunt them and they'll lose somehow. That's the biggest thing to me. Obviously we have some big disagreements in terms of the Pac-12, but I see where you guys are coming from on a lot of the picks. I think Texas State is probably the biggest outlier, but I think we're a lot closer than the graphic kind of says. It's just I have, a lower ceiling towards the top of the conference. It's easier for a 4-3 team to kind of sneak up into that top 3.
Texas State was definitely going to be the team I pointed out, just solely because, as we talked about, they're going to be able to be explosive offensively, put up a ton of points. It's just, does that defense have a pulse? And I think if they do, they easily could be elevated to a top 3 team in this conference by season's end.
Yeah, and that I kind of for the Pac-12, Texas State would be one where I could definitely see myself being wrong on holistically. It's just who steps up outside that passing game is really what it barrels down to. Because even though I have the finishing 6, again, they have the type of upside where they could legitimately play for a conference title at the end of the year if the other aspects of that team do step up. Interesting tidbit, though, as well, was I kind of look at the independents too, is Notre Dame is the only team in the country that I think has an over-under right now set at 11.5 wins on the year. So, the betting markets are asking themselves right now, do they lose a game? That's really the million-dollar question here. BYU, I think if they do drop a game, I think that game on the road against BYU, because Provo, underrated environment, beautiful environment. It's a cross-country road trip as well. Experienced starting quarterback. I like Kenny Sasakte as the head coach. If they drop a game, that BYU game on the road would be the one that I would certainly circle, right? So that would be the one that I would kind of call for. The fact that we all have them going 12-0 will probably mean, unironically, Notre Dame drops a couple of games.
Yeah, they'll drop week 1 versus Wisconsin.
Again, and all 4 years, Marcus Freeman's dropped multiple games. So,
yeah, luckily he doesn't have to deal with the ghost of Thomas Hammock, though, in that NIU squad, because maybe Rice could be that team too. We don't want to play with food by any means.
Yeah, don't mess around with your food. Hey, Stanford, who knows? Maybe take them out of the blue.
Does Stanford have a pulse?
Boston College.
Yeah. Does Boston College have a pulse too?
Hey, maybe Fran Brown helps out at the last game of the season again.
Road game.
Calls out some coach and be like, I helped you. I got you in,
But hey, we're going to go ahead and sign off here for tonight. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's been a long time, and I miss interacting with all you guys. But I'm back, and they're back as well. We're going to go ahead. That's going to wrap up at least all the G6 conferences. Next time you see us on a live show, we get into the Power 4. We get into maybe some more spicier debates here as we get a little bit closer to the start of the season. So you're going to want to tune in for that. But in the meantime, Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed yourself here tonight, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you do have to be brand new. This is Jake, joined by Colton, my left-hand man, as well as my right-hand man, Reed Napper. Hope you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care. Good night, everybody.